Behind in 2012, Europe had its PHIGS issue, Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain, toxicity banks, insurmountable obligation and persistent budgeting deficits. Now it has the PHIGS of 2018, Poland, Hungary, Italy, Greece and Spain. Present the challenges are more than facility and various, but they include overall cradle in a increasing famous disappointment in the policy main. And the throw of letter is various. A rough revival they drew supporting of really various constituencies. The M5S is shamelessly Narodnik, promise poorer Italians a superior transactions. The League's supporters are superior away, but alike enemy to migration and the force of the EU. Over the 1 week, CEO Sergio Mattarella nixed their appointment of a visible Eurosceptic as financial secretary. All Hades ruined friable, and down there were mutterings on impeaching Mattarella. But by the end of the 1 week, the M5S and the League had their way as the CEO recognized a fixed office queue. Europe is on to get a rough revival. But Jean-Claude Juncker, the Europe Committee CEO, isn't hilly above, proverb how Italy as necessary more than job, less than corrupt practices, severity. The finance markets are lightweight. Italy has a by the government following almost 90 days out of, but docile on which comes following. The recipes progressive by M5S and the League unite high social conducting and tax intermittent, a top risk policy in a nation meeting on a obligation heap of €2.1 billion and an rigid labor marketplace. By difference, Spain has done enormous advance with creature on lifetime supporting 6-year back, while its banks were dive and ratings agencies valuable its obligation at a groove over rubbish, on a PAR in Azerbaijan. Its economics is increasing at a wholesome checkmark, joblessness is downward, although yet top, its letter of credit ranking is recovered. And Spaniards are eagerly pro-Europe. So why worry about? Since policy in Spain, length dominated by the prudent famous side, PHIGS, and the socialists, has split. Not just is down their secession in Catalonia but two parties, Podemos and Ciudadanos, include founded to problem the old duopoly. Podemos has the identical kind of Narodnik cradle as M5S, although its prescriptions are really various, Ciudadanos railway track versus precinctive corrupt practices. Spain had 2 elections in 2016. Both of brought deadlock, ultimately Mariano Rajoy paved along a minority group by the government. But corrupt practices convictions versus elder PHIGS members recent 1 week led to a not confidence movement in parliament. Now Spain has a socialistic main secretary, Pedro Sanchez, whose side holds fair 84 of the 350 parliament seats. The sum PHIGS now Greece rest a budgeting excess, but its total obligation is 180% of its total national food, Italy's is 133%. On August 20, it exits the intense thoroughness managed by the Europe Centre Banking and World Cash Foundation, but Europe has to solve which kind of obligation ease it will propose on the $280 trillion Athens yet owes. Germany and other are not in charity sentiment, and down there's no warranty of entreaty how will enable Greece to suffer its obligation loading while EU financial ministers conduct a do or break meet after the monthly. Later down there are Poland and Hungary. They are financially in nice form but at war in Brussels on all of migration and the autonomy of the judicial to liberty of the clique and more democratic values. They include order wing Narodnik governments how might be mercifully outlined as semi-detached of the EU. Both of discarded EU plans for immigrant quotas to stake the load of the inflow inbound through the Mediterranean, motive the Europe Committee to give legislative activity. Viktor Orban, who dominates Magyar policy as main secretary, he won his tertiary period in April, and lead of the steering PHIGS side, promotes which he telephone call and a liberal option to Europe unanimity. Poland, meantime, has sided in the trump card authority versus its Europe partners on topic as diverse as Iran sanctions regime and Ruski gas pipeline to Europe. Warsaw's measures to limit the autonomy of the judicial include driven reprimand of Brussels. To try to restrain in these capricious members, Europe officials are float the perspective of intermittent in the lavish finance supporting taking into account to the ex-communistic state how united the EU in the 1990s. The EU budgeting will get a hit while the UK foliage, Poland, that gets on a tenth of the EU budgeting, and Hungary may pay the cost. And eventually of year, on the EU's menu bar of unresolved issues, the regulation for Brexit are far of signed, in spite more than rather than a year of talks and the looming last date of March 2019. One day Britain foliage, Germany and France will one day once again be the motors of Europe, as they were while the unique overall marketplace was shaped. Down there were hopes how a Macron-Merkel axle would conduct the Europe Association to the sunny uplands of a new epoch, but the France-CEO's ambitions to intensify seamless integration are not matched by the Deutsche Chancellor's cautious. Merkel has been chastened by the ejection of Deutsche Neurotism in the form of the option for Germany, the distant right against immigrant side how is now the formal opposition in the Deutsche Parliament. As if Macron and Merkel don't include quite on their hands, the EU as well has two transactions in the headache of an beginning trading war in the US. In 1954 one of Merkel's predecessors, Konrad Adenauer, set out elevated goals. This oneness of Europe was the vision of a few. It became the expect of lot present it has be a need for all of us, he told.